Hi everybody, I want to thank you for having me here today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the economy and the free market solutions to these tough times. There's a good chance that you or somebody you know has been affected by the current economic downturn. Can I see a show of hands, please? Yeah, the vast majority of you. We are in a steep deflationary recession, unemployment continues to climb, and the values of our goods continue to drop. It's hard not to feel the pain right now. Thankfully, there's an easy way to get out of this mess. Just let it happen. Sounds insane, doesn't it? As a society, we always want a quick fix, but quick fixes are only short-term solutions. Real prosperity comes with time. That prosperity can be generated by a simple 5-step plan that uses free market principles. 1. Abolish the Federal Reserve. 2. Return to the gold standard. 3. Repeal the income tax. 4. Cut government spending by at least 50%. And 5. Repeal laws to prohibit the exchange of goods and services. So I'll start with the Federal Reserve. The Fed is the biggest culprit at fault for this recession. It was created in 1913 to help keep banks stable, but that hasn't happened. We recently just completed stress tests on 19 of our nation's largest banks. 10 of the 19 needed more capital, totaling roughly $75 billion. Way to go, Fed. The actions of the Fed have built up a phony economy over the years. They kept interest rates artificially low, and that created the illusion of a strong foundation. The flow of credit allowed the economy to expand, but the interest rates were not justified. Banks need to have the right amount of savings on hand in order to make loans. As a nation, we did a poor job of saving money. So banks lent out money that didn't exist. You can only function under debt for so long before collapsing, and the collapse has finally happened. Not only are they responsible for what's happening now, but they were responsible for causing the Great Depression. The Fed expanded the money supply in the 1920s, leading to a false boom. The current chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, admitted the Fed's actions were the main cause behind the Depression. Throughout history, the Federal Reserve has done more harm than good, so we got to get rid of it. Next up, the gold standard, or sound money. Friedrich Hayek, an economist, won the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics in 1974. He explained the business cycle was nothing more than artificial boom and bust periods created by the Federal Reserve. With a Federal Reserve, there could be no constant growth, just setbacks and rebounds. According to Hayek, and I quote, "The past instability of the market economy is the consequence of the exclusion of the most important regulator of the market mechanism, money, from itself being regulated by the market process." End quote. In order for the market to properly regulate money again, we need to return to the gold standard and abandon our current fiat currency. With a gold standard in place, we can easily combat inflation. Inflation isn't a huge problem right now, but the printing presses are running at full speed. That money will start circulating soon, and prices will skyrocket because of it. That problem wouldn't exist with the gold standard in place. Now, the income tax. The income tax is something all of you probably hate. I know I do. So let's just get rid of it. The government functioned without one before 1913. We can function without one again. Although with the government having less revenue coming in, we need to cut some spending. So these two steps of the plan are very much connected. No income tax and less government spending. The government has its hands in many affairs, and it's about time that they step aside. The primary function of government is to protect our civil liberties and enforce contracts. They can still play a small role in many areas in order to protect and enforce, but too big of a role is a burden on us taxpayers. Not to mention government-run programs almost always flop. We have a Department of Education, but we have lower test scores and higher tuition fees than we did before. A few years ago, there was a fast ferry project right here in Rochester, New York. The ferry ran twice a day from Rochester to Toronto. It was a huge burden on taxpayers, and that ended up flopping. The government means well, but once it has control of something, there is no incentive to improve. Improvement comes through competition. Private-run businesses strive to make their goods and services continuously better against others. Would private businesses be as careless as government programs? Probably not, considering they are seeking a profitable business. The cuts in government spending should be at least 50% in order for the private sector to truly thrive. Finally, the government needs to repeal laws that prohibit the exchange of goods and services. As much as the previous steps would help unemployment, this is the easiest way to create jobs. Some subjects, such as the drug war, strike the nerves of some people. That's perfectly understandable. But the economic benefit of repealing these laws is undeniable. Hemp, for example, can be used in hundreds of ways. Most people think hemp would only be used for recreational and medicinal purposes. But hemp can improve the quality of many products. Rope, paper, clothing, paint, fuel, and cosmetics are just a few of the things that hemp can be used for. More jobs and new spending can be created just from hemp alone. And there are laws on combat sports, gambling, food, etc. If all of these unconstitutional laws on the books that prohibit the exchange of goods and services were repealed, full employment could be reached easily. At the end of the day, the economy is simply a consumer-driven system. Me and you people. When demand is high, the economy will grow. When demand is low, the economy will go through a dry spell. This is how a free market system works. The recession of 1921 should be the model the government follows to pull us out of hard times. There was a sharp economic downturn from 1921 to 1922, worse than the first year of the Great Depression. The Federal Reserve didn't interfere. The government cut taxes and spending, and from 1922 to 23, there was a recovery period. The suffering only lasted 1 year. It was the free market that brought us back to prosperity and led us to the Roaring '20s. The government can't force the economy to heat up at will, only consumers can. When the government interferes, they upset the natural cycle of the economy. The New Deal was put in place to pull us out of the Great Depression, but that only prolonged the pain. The Depression didn't end until 12 years after the New Deal went into effect. The only true solution to this crisis is to just let the recession occur. When prices drop enough to our liking, we will start spending again. That, however, will only take us so far. We can grow again in our current state, but the results can be so much greater under this 5-step plan. So what can we do exactly to put this plan in motion? We need to speak up. We need to say something. Send your emails to your representatives. You can protest, you can run for office, or anything else you can think of. I recently wrote to my congressman, Eric Massa, to co-sponsor H.R. 1207. This bill would thoroughly audit the Federal Reserve. Within 2 weeks, he signed on. The size and scope of our government can only be reduced if we ask for it. Then, a true free market can lead us to prosperity. Thank you for listening to my proposal today, and with that, I would like to open it up to some questions.
Yes, you said that with a gold standard in place, inflation would not be a serious problem. Can you go into a little more detail for me, please?
Well, gold and silver have real intrinsic value to them, which meaning they're scarce and they're not as easy to get a hold of. Our current fiat dollar, on the other hand, we can just print the money. It's like it grows off trees. So the government just prints the money, it goes into circulation, and it's too many dollars chasing too few goods. And that's how we get inflation. Prices skyrocket as a result. Under a gold standard, you only have a limited amount of currency, so you only have to spend what you have. And there's a little bit of confusion about what gold standard actually is. We wouldn't actually be using gold and silver to hand to people. We'd still have our dollar, but it would be backed by gold and silver. Meaning you would go take your money, give it to the bank, and they can actually give you physical gold in return for it. That way the government's showing you that it's not printing too much money, it's keeping it in line with the amount of gold and silver that the banks have on hand. Any more questions?
How do you know that government-run businesses can't be as successful as the private sector?
Good question. Some can be successful, but history has shown us that that's usually not the case. Let's say, for example, that the government wants to get into the sneaker industry. They become the sole manufacturer and seller of shoes. Because they're the lone business for sneakers, they can set prices as high as they want. As long as there's a demand for it, they can raise the prices as high as they want until people start to go away. So they can set the bar really high, I don't know, $500 for a pair of sneakers. And people need sneakers, so people will buy them. Also, since they're the only ones making the sneakers, you probably shouldn't expect the quality to be that high either, since there's no competitive sneaker going up against them. If the private sector was in control of the sneaker industry, you'd have to have fair market prices, lower prices, because you'd have two competing sneaker companies. That way, they'd have to keep up with the new designs, what can make it run faster, what's more comfortable for the soles, toe support, all these weird things. The government probably doesn't put all these little details into the thought when they get into it. They just look at the big picture, but private-run businesses realize that there's a lot of small components that make up an industry. So that's why. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.